If there's one thing we've learned about business and life, it's that people are the X factor. They constantly surprise us, both in amazing ways and not so much. We're Ben and Syya, and welcome to the Gnaw on This Business Bites podcast. This show is all about real-life things we all deal with every day, how they relate to business, and how to make some sense out of our daily chaos. Welcome to the show. And welcome back to another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bites. I'm Ben and this is Syya. And this week, we want to talk to you about being a good guest. Now, we're not talking about bringing flowers or a pie or something like that when you show up at my house, for dinner. I'm talking about being a podcast guest. Because when it comes to being a podcast guest, and you want this thing to be successful, and you want something that is going to benefit you in the long run, you need to make sure that you are a great guest. Now, Syya, I don't know what you're doing. But put your phone down. You're not being a good guest.
I'm sorry. Attention? Are we doing something here?
Yeah, we're recording.
Okay. Oh yeah. Well, hold on a second. Let me get back to Mary about today's plans. Okay.
You know what? Tell Mary you can call her back later. Turn the phone off, please. Turn the phone off. Because that's the number one thing. It says we need to be present. We need to be present when we are in a podcast. When we're an interview guest, we need to sit there and say, okay, this is my job for 15, 30, 45, 60 minutes. My job is to be there, to listen, to engage, to be interesting, to be thought-provoking, and to be someone who can add value not only to the host, but to the host's audience. And you're sitting there just paying attention to yourself, aren't you? Okay.
I'm sorry, what?
No, tell you what. This has to be all about you. So, Syya, why don't you tell me how to be a good guest?
Oh my gosh. I am so excited to be a guest on your show and just so excited, I love your show and I'm glad that you have me on. What's your show about?
And what's the name of my show?
Oh, what's the name of your show too? But hey, I'm amazing and I should be a guest on your show. I do all things wellness and beauty products. And I think your show is about cybersecurity. So I think we're a perfect fit, right?
There we go.
Why wouldn't you have me on your show? I've got 4 million followers. I think I'm just going to act it all out. All my frustrations with guests. The other thing is, getting pitched by people who have no business being on your show for whatever reason. I've got a book I'm putting out. And I think it's going to be amazing. And it's all about underwater basket weaving. So again, with your podcast on agriculture.
My leadership podcast, that's perfect for it, right?
100%. You know what? Because I'm a published author. You should have me on your show. I've spoken in front of 15 people before. And I can do an amazing job. Or, I'm going to do this one because I know it's going to irk everybody because I've done this one too many times. You should have me on your podcast because I'm amazing.
Turn your mic on, dear. It might be a good thing if you turned your mic on.
See? So anyway.
You know what?
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, all jokes aside, everybody. To be a guest on a podcast is a serious responsibility. You first of all need to do a little bit of homework. Who are the people that you're pitching? If you want to be on somebody's podcast, why should they want to have you on their podcast to begin with? Why should they care about you? Why should they care about your message? How are you adding value not only to them, but to their audience? How are you being able to tell a story that's going to be relevant, that's going to be interesting, that's going to be dynamic, and it's going to make their audience sit there and go, wait a second here. That was a great person. I want to listen to the next episode. Because if you can't do that, why do you want to be on their podcast? There's 4.5 million podcasts out there. If you're whole thing is about health and beauty or makeup, or that, there's probably 10,000 podcasts about health and beauty and makeup. Go find those podcasts.
You know what I love? And it just popped up in my head, and that's why I was getting excited again. Oh my gosh. I think I'm like sweating how happy and excited I am to talk about, like, how much it bothers me. It's, I want to be on your podcast. Here are the 10 questions you can talk about with me.
Oh, those are my favorite.
And I'm like, wait, none of those topics or questions interest me at all. Mm-hmm. You might actually have an interesting story. You fell off a ship and you survived in the sea for 3 days. That's amazing. Let's talk about that. Right? Not talk about, like, you know, whatever, my business leadership skills and all that stuff. Here's something I actually say to my clients and guests. Whatever your content is, whatever your story is, whatever your conversation, your perspective, if you cannot tie back in a physical emotion, when I say physical, an emotion to that story, it's not engaging. It's not of value. The audience will not have something to hold on to. You know what I mean? And when I get people, and I get pitched all the time, as well as you do, and anyone else that's a podcaster, we get pitched all the time. I don't care about your book that you're putting out. What I do care about is, why did you write this book?
Exactly.
What's the story behind it? When you were writing that book, where were your doubts? How did you come up with this amazing chapter? Like, that was a pretty nifty thing. Don't tell me what the book is. Tell me the story behind it, because you know what? I can Google what the damn book is.
Yeah. And what drove you to write it? Yeah. What drove you to write it? What was the impetus that, you know, what was going on in your life at that particular moment that says, oh my God, I need to write this book because this is happening and I need to talk about this. You know, it is amazing to me how few guests get that. And, you know, there's the other thing is that when you're going to be a guest, think about the host, because they're the one inviting you into their home. They're inviting you into their home. And not only that, they're introducing you to their friends, their relatives, their crazy Aunt Sarah and their grandmother.
And their bosses.
You know, their bosses.
I mean, they're professional people, friends, the butcher shop and all these other things. Yes. Yes. Because, you know, when you go, this is a perfect analogy. Oh my God, I'm so excited, Ben. Oh my gosh, I got another analogy in my head. Excellent. When you go into someone's house and they invite you over for dinner, right? They don't expect you to just sit there and chew on the dinner and be like, how's the dinner? It's delicious dinner. And you sit there and stare at each other. It's like, no, be interactive. And I say this to everyone on any of my shows. Ask me questions. I'm okay with banter. Don't Q&A. Don't make me Q&A. It's pulling teeth. And I don't understand why you want to be a guest if you don't understand how to engage. So yeah, sorry. I'm just really feeling it right now.
And ask a host. You know, first of all, I always say, have a 15-minute meeting either before the interview right there or at a separate time to find out who's the guest, why do they have the podcast, who's their audience, who listens to the show, why do they listen to this show, and be prepared for that. You know what? 9 times out of 10, a good host is not coming to you with a pre-designed list of questions.
No, yeah.
Anybody that has 10 questions and say, hi, my podcast is 10 questions. I ask the same 10 questions to everybody, and that's my podcast. Yeah, that's probably not the podcast you want to be on. But if you have people out there that are curious about you and want you to be curious about them and want to have a conversation and see where the conversation is going, there's gold that can come out of that. And the more engaging you can be and the more interesting you can be, the better it is. And then be prepared to tell that story beyond the podcast. Be able to share it on social media. Tell people, oh my God, I was just on this podcast. The episode's coming out in about 6 weeks. I can't wait to be able to share it with everybody. And when the host gives you the episode or they gives you the links or some images and stuff like that, share it and share it more than once and tell your story and put it on your website and be there, be active and be part of this and tag the host and be able to sit there and say, you know what? Thank you for having me on your podcast. Let me share it with my world to be able to expand not only my credibility as a guest, but your credibility as a host.
You so nailed it in the head right there. Like, I cannot understand how many times I've seen my amazing clients with amazing guests don't leverage their own social media to
Mhm.
help promote the damn show. If you took the time to be a guest on someone's show, why wouldn't you promote it? Why wouldn't you put the message out? Why are you putting it all on the podcast host to push it out? Especially if maybe they don't have the same following as you. I don't understand that. And I get it. Sometimes I get busy. Maybe I don't do it right away. Maybe I do it a day or two later, sometime a week later. But at least you do it. I got great advice the other day on my other live stream that I do. And the gentleman, I'll give Rob Southgate credit on this one. He goes, Syya, best advice he'd ever gotten from a mentor. And it was an interesting saying, which is always have the last word. It wasn't in the context that we're thinking of always having the last word.
Right.
Not an argument. It is, if someone takes the time to comment on your posts or comment on your live stream, or anyone that takes the time to do anything on your behalf,
Hey, thank you.
Reply.
Absolutely.
Always reply. That is something I don't understand. I can't tell how many times I've tagged guests and they don't reply back. And I'm like, oh.
I would be amazed. It says, you know what? The bigger the name, the headline, guests, it's amazing. Those are the people that never respond to your post. Because they sit there and say, okay,
yes.
I did that. Their following will take care of it. No, you're the one with 2.5 million followers. If you really, why were you on my podcast? If you don't want to promote this, if you don't have an agenda of why you want to be on my podcast, don't be on my podcast.
No.
I look at it and sit there and say, we need to sit there and say, why do I want to be on the podcast? What am I trying to get out of this? How do I want people to act once they know, like, and trust me? And how am I going to use this material for the next 3 to 6 months to be able to verify myself as a thought leader, etc., and be able to utilize it? And all of that is being a thoughtful guest.
It's funny. Another thing that just brought it up to me is how many times people. I'll speak for myself.
Sure.
Where I've had people on my podcast and I've never been reciprocated. And I'm not demanding for all my previous guests. I'm not necessarily saying it, but I do see a trend in that for my clients as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that fascinating. It's like, oh, you want me to open my doors up for you, to my family, my home, my friends, my neighborhood, but I'm apparently not good enough for your hosting. That does sting, and people do remember that. So for
Absolutely.
Those that are always like hunting down, wanting to be guests on people's podcasts and whatnot, just be aware that if you're not reciprocating, it will be noted. And this community talks enough.
This community talks a lot. I mean, most of my greatest guests are people that I've heard on other people's podcasts, and I've reached out to other podcasters. They said, look, they were really good. Yes, they're really good. Do you mind having it? I says, well, yeah, they were, but they were really a prima donna, or they never did this, or they never did this, or they never promoted the podcast, or they were 15 minutes late, or they canceled on me 3 times before we actually got a chance to record the episode. And all of those things make you sit there as a host go, yeah, maybe I don't care how big a name this person is. Maybe I really don't want to have them on my podcast. And I think we need to be able to look and sit there and say, our job as a guest and our job as a host is to make each other shine. And if we can help each other shine, if we can help each other add value to each other's audiences and be able to expand our network, that's what being a podcast is all about. So let's gnaw on that and let's think about that. And, I'd love to hear people's comments.
I feel like I know I've pissed some people off. So,
absolutely.
You know what? It is what it is.
All right. You know what? I'm Ben. This is Syya. We'll see you next week.
See ya. Hey. Thanks for listening to another episode of Gnaw on This, Business Bites. If you liked what you heard, we most humbly ask that you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to communicate more effectively within your organization, contact Ben at yourbrandmarketing.com or me, Syya, at innovationmediaenterprises.com. We can help you build your community, brand awareness, and personality through podcasting. We cannot wait to hear from you. So see you next week for another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bites.